to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. Let me introduce the members of town government that assist this board. To my left is Vincent Pizzulli, attorney to the board. To his left is Blaise Donadio, a planner in the planning department. You're all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances, and it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you are requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide us with precise, accurate information so we as a board can make a decision based on the facts that you present here tonight. We as a board must consider the 5 following conditions. They're listed here for you. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other means. Number 3, whether the variance is substantial. Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. When you are called, please present your certificates of postings and mailings to Mr. Donadio, and then you will be asked to go to the podium, where you state your name and address for the record and proceed to tell us why you need the variance. At the end of your presentation, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on your case, they will be given 1 opportunity to do so. Then the applicant can come back to the podium to answer their concerns. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning the case. There are 3 ways to find out about your case. You can stay after the hearing, but there's no guarantee that your case will be acted on tonight. You can call the planning office tomorrow, or you can wait and be notified by mail. We do have 2 adjournments. The first adjournment is case 18245, 779A Middle Country Road, LLC. Was there anyone here for that case? That has been adjourned to January 14th. The second case is case number 1-18201, George Diffendale. Anyone here for that? No. That has been adjourned to January 28th. One second. Before we start, as you can see, it's very crowded tonight. We're trying to get everything on the record, so we would appreciate that there's no calling out from the audience. Everybody will be given 1 opportunity to speak on the case, whether against or for. So if you could just refrain from speaking out so we can get everything on the record, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first case on the agenda is case number 18237, Comac Shopping Center, 2 Veterans Memorial Highway in Comac. The location of the property is the south side of Veterans Memorial Highway, 505 feet east of Comac Road. The property is zoned NB. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce minimum landscaping from 10% to 4.2%, which is existing at 5.3%. Reduce the minimum parking spaces from 1,787 to 1,030. Reduce the number of landscaped island ends by 52. Reduce the size of 20 landscape island ends. Increase the height of a facade from 35 feet to 40 feet. Permit a wall sign over 15 feet to 30 feet high for sign S1. Permit a wall sign over 15 feet to 25 feet high for sign S2. Permit 2 wall signs not to face a public street for wall signs S2 and S3B. Increase the maximum number of wall signs from 1 to 4. Permit a wall sign over 15 feet high to 19 feet for signs S3A and S3B. Permit a ground sign over 32 square feet to 118 square feet, which is existing at 114 square feet for sign GSA. Permit a ground sign over 32 square feet to 118 square feet, 114 square feet existing for sign SGSB.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Anthony Guardino. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Farrell Fritz, In Hauppauge, New York, I represent Comac Shopping Center Associates, which is an affiliate. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So as I was saying, I represent Comac Shopping Center Associates, which is an affiliate of the File Organization, which owns the Comac Plaza Shopping Center in Comac. The applicant, as was just mentioned, is seeking area variance relief from the town's landscaping buffer, parking, and sign requirements in connection with the redevelopment of the Macy's store, with a BJ's store, and 2 retail pad sites in the northeast portion of the parking lot. To assist in the presentation tonight, I have Chris Robinson, a professional engineer with R&M Engineering, Dennis Flynn with Rosenbaum Design Group, and Wayne Muller, a professional traffic engineer, also with R&M Engineering. To answer any questions the board may have, I have Patrick Smith from BJ's and Vincent Lucarelli from the File Organization. So if you have any questions, I can direct them to them if I can't answer them. The property is a little over 17 acres, a little over 17 and a half acres, located at 2 Veterans Highway, at the intersection of Jericho Turnpike and Veterans Highway in Comac. It is located in the town's neighborhood business district. And you have some photos in your booklet there at Exhibit 1, 2, and 3. I'm sure the board is familiar with the shopping center. The property is currently developed with a 1-story, 280,547 square foot shopping center, which is occupied by a number of retail stores, including a 2-level, 213,095 square foot Macy's, and also several restaurants. And the photos of the subject property and the survey are in your packet. The current proposal is to replace the existing 2-level, 213,095 square foot Macy's store with a new 1-level, 104,102 square foot BJ's store and 2 retail pad sites that will together total 4,500 square feet. So this represents over a 51% reduction in the size of the Macy's store and nearly a 40% reduction in the overall size of the shopping center. So what's happening here is BJ's is going to be constructing a new store on essentially the footprint of the Macy's, but the new store will be 1-story rather than 2 stories, or 2 levels, I should say, because the Macy's, as you know, has a full basement of retail space. So it's essentially cutting the retail space in half. Both the Macy's and the BJ's are, for zoning purposes, the same use. They're both retail uses, and they're both expressly permitted in the neighborhood business district. This shopping center was constructed in the late 1950s or early 1960s, was originally anchored by an S. Klein department store. The S. Klein later became E.J. Corvettes in the mid-70s, and then Gertz, and then it was a Stearns and a Wallbaum's, and eventually to a Macy's. When the shopping center was constructed about 70 years ago, it predated many of the town's requirements for landscaping, buffering, parking, and sign requirements, essentially the requirements that we have to comply with today. So this is a prior non-conforming shopping center. These pre-existing non-conforming conditions, as a result of this application, are actually being significantly improved and brought more into conformance with today's regulations. So while you look at the call of the meeting, and this center is in fact still going to be deficient in a lot of ways from what the code requires today, it's actually a vast improvement in some areas and a modest improvement in other areas over what's there today. And that's as a result of the fact that eliminating half the retail space. I know that many of the residents have expressed concerns about the loss of the Macy's store, but I want everyone to understand, including the board, that Macy's precipitated the redevelopment proposal that is before you today when they notified the owner that they would be closing the Macy's store and even requesting an early termination. So Macy's is leaving. It asked to leave early. So they are not, the BJ's is not the cause of this application, but rather the result of Macy's leaving this shopping center. The Comac Plaza Shopping Center is located in an area, as you all know, that has historically been developed retail uses. To the east is the large Kimco Shopping Center that on its western side is anchored by the Target and the Party City stores. There's also the Candlelight Diner located to the east. To the west, you have Comac Corner Shopping Center. To the north, across Jericho Turnpike and Vets Highway, you have the Mavis Tire Center, the Comac Car Wash, the shopping center further to the east, and then there's a filling station that is going to be, also going to be a filling station and soon to be a Bola Market across the street. To the south, you have the Fairfield Garden apartment complex, and you have photos of existing properties at Exhibit 6 in your booklet. The applicant is seeking variance relief in order to redevelop the existing 213,000 square foot Macy's store with the new 104,000 square foot BJ store, and to construct the two retail pad sites in the unused portion of the parking lot, which is in the northeast. You have a site plan in your packet at Exhibit 7 and some elevations of the proposed BJ's. As Dennis Flynn will explain shortly, the existing 70-year-old Macy's store will be demolished and its basement filled in, as I mentioned, and a new attractive and energy-efficient BJ's store will be reconstructed on basically the same footprint that the Macy's stores exist on today. This non-conforming site will be enhanced and with increased buffers along both the north and south boundaries of the site, and with larger landscaped areas at the entrance to the site. The BJ's and the other uses in the shopping center will be served by 1,030 parking spaces, including 5 land bank spaces. And as Mr. Muller, our traffic expert, is going to explain, the 1,030 parking spaces will be more than sufficient to accommodate the parking demand generated by the proposed BJ's and the retail sites. As far as the relief, I just want to go through them and explain how the situation is actually improving. So, one of the variances that is needed is to reduce the minimum percent of landscaping from 10%. I think the call of the meeting said to 4.6%. It's actually backwards. It's not 4.6. We're actually increasing it to 6.5%. So the existing landscaping right now is 4.6%, and the new landscaped area will total 6.5% with the new plan. So that is, in fact, an improvement over the current condition. So that was an error in the denial letter and an error in the call in the meeting, but an error in a good way. We're also seeking to reduce the minimum required parking from 1,787 spaces to 1,030. That is a 42.4% or 757 space deficiency. But I do want to point out that the existing conditions with the two-level Macy's requires 2,832 spaces, where existing today, there are 1,053 spaces. So today, there's a 62.8% deficiency. It's about 1,779 space deficiency. So again, this application is bringing the site more into compliance with the parking regulations. So whereas there were 3.7 spaces per 1,000 square feet existing, we're actually bringing it to 5.8 spaces per 1,000. So significant increase in the parking condition, and I'll let Mr. Muller address that. There's also a reduction in the number of the landscaped aisle ends that are required at the end of every row of 20 parking spaces. They're being reduced by 52. Again, this is mostly an existing condition, and the landscape aisles that are there don't meet the current code requirement of 9 by 18. They're slightly smaller. So again, that's an existing condition. The height of a small portion of the facade of the building and the front, the north facade, is being increased. The call of the meeting says from 35 feet to 40. It's actually 39 feet 4 inches. But I do want to point out, and if you look at your elevations in Exhibit 8, and I know it's hard to see, but it's hard to see because it's such a small area, which kind of demonstrates my point. If you look at the top of the parapet above the top elevation, triangular. Well, you have to look at the one in the book here because that one doesn't have it. The one in the book has a small area that shows it's shaded or crosshatched. It shows the area above the 35-foot line. 35 is the maximum height. We're at 39 feet 4 inches. That small, tiny sliver of the top of the triangle is the only exceedance over the 35 feet. It represents 0.9%, so less than 1% of the overall facade area. It's de minimis, it's not perceptible to the naked eye. No one will ever know whether that small little triangle exceeds the 35-foot limit. I also want to point out, if you look to Exhibit 9, this small, the parapet that goes over that goes up and allows for this wall sign is a vast improvement over the photograph at Exhibit 9, which was the S. Klein department store, where you see there's actually a roof sign that exceeds well over the top of the roof. We're talking, in our case, a small sliver of a triangle. This, at Exhibit 9, you'll see this photograph, a historical photograph from probably the 1960s, which shows a significant roof sign. This, again, is de minimis in comparison to what has historically been there. With respect to signs, the BJ's will have 4 wall signs. There will be 2 BJ signs, S1 and S2. One will be located on the north facade, and one will be located on the east facade, essentially the same as what Macy's has today. Although I will point out that Macy's actually has a 3rd sign, which faces the Comac Corners Shopping Center. BJ's is not asking for a BJ sign in that location. They are asking for a small tire sales and service sign that will be much lower than the existing Macy's. And I think the photographs are in your booklet of showing the 3 Macy's signs, where we're asking for 2 BJ's wall signs. Again, there will be 2 other signs on the property, the tire sales and service, which are signs 3A and 3B, one each on the north and on the west facades. BJ's is also proposing to modify the 2 existing ground signs that are located at the eastern and western entrances to the center by changing the name of the center from Macy's Plaza to BJ's Plaza. So if you look at the photograph in Exhibit 11, you will see the signs that are there today. These are the signs that are here. BJ's is going to just change, they're going to change the Macy's name to BJ's. So they're going to eliminate 5 letters and put 3 letters there in its place. So that's actually a reduction. That's a reduction.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
Please, we're trying to get everything on the record. When you're talking in the audience, it interferes with the court reporter trying to take the information down. So if you could just refrain from it, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. So changing the name from Macy's to BJ's is actually a reduction in the area of the sign, although I will point out that the way the town calculated it, it looks like we're 4 square feet over what was originally there. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at the sign drawings, you will see the Macy's sign or the BJ sign in comparison to the Macy's. And again, it's just the topper. The sign is staying exactly the same. So the topper is slightly smaller, again, in existing condition. The wall sign on the north facade, S1 on BJ's, will be at 29 feet, 7.5 inches high, where 15 feet is permitted. And the maximum height is actually to the top of the check mark, which is essentially the apostrophe on BJ's. So a very small area actually exceeds that full height. The same thing with the wall sign on the east facade. That will not be as tall. That will be at 24 feet, 4 3/4 inches high, where 15 feet is permitted. Again, the maximum height is the top of that small apostrophe that protrudes over the BJ's letters. The 2 signs that I mentioned about regarding tire sales and service on the north and west facades, they will be 19 feet high, where 15 feet is permitted. And as I mentioned earlier, on that facade, the western facade, the Macy's store actually has a large Macy's sign in that location, much, much higher on the western facade. So this is a smaller sign and at a much lower level than what exists there today. So again, that's an improvement. And then there were two of the wall signs. We need a variance because they are not facing a public street. One is the Macy's sign that is facing east into the parking lot, of the rest of the shopping center, again, which is there today, and it was there when Klein's was there. There's always been a sign facing the eastern facade. And then on the western facade, there is the tire center, sales and service center, which is again facing the Comac Corners direction, so that's to the west. We're increasing the maximum number of wall signs from 1 to 4. Again, the Macy's store has 3 primary Macy's signs, and BJ's is only proposing 2 primary BJ signs, and then the 2 smaller secondary signs. And then lastly, we need a relief to permit the 2 existing ground signs, which are over 32 square feet, that's permitted, to allow us to be at 118 square feet. But as I pointed out, the existing signs, if you look at them and measure them, they're actually at 114 square feet now. So they're well over the 32 square feet. If you look at the sign drawing, the word Macy's is actually accounts for about 16 and a half square feet at the top, and that's going to be replaced with BJ's lettering, which actually only measures less than 7 square feet, so it's actually half the size. But, and again, it's a reduction in letters from 5 to 3, but the way the town measured the sign to the highest point of the apostrophe, they added it up to 118. But the reality is it's a smaller sign than what's there today. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Chris Robinson to just kind of explain the site plan for the board. Chris? Oh, before I, hold on. I'd like to introduce this letter. I think you already have this. Came in from Rich Murdaco, who is a land use blogger. Who I just know of, and I don't know him. You have this already? Okay, great.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Could you state your name, spell
Yes.
your last name, and give your company address for the record,
Certainly.
please?
Christopher Robinson, president of RMS Engineering, R&M Engineering in 50 Elm Street, Huntington, New York. It's ROBINSON.
Thank you.
We've been working very closely with the file organization and BJ's over the last year or so to develop the plan that's in front of you. I'm just going to walk through a couple of the main components that are changing. First, I have a couple of reduced copies of the plan here. I only brought 5 of them, but it has in red the outline of the Macy's footprint so that you can see the comparative difference of where the BJ's is going to be compared to Macy's. So. The Macy's building, as Mr. Guardino said, is going to be completely raised. Currently, it's a 2-level building. There's a full basement and there's a main floor. The lower level will be filled in. We're going to take the building footprint and move it a little bit closer to Veterans Memorial Highway, away from the Fairfield apartment complex. Currently, the setback is 26 feet from the property line to the back of the Macy's building. The BJ's is going to be 59 feet away from that southerly property line. We're going to increase the landscape buffer against the Fairfield development. Currently, it's 2 feet, and in that 2 feet, it's a chain link fence and a concrete curb. There really is no vegetation. That's going to be increased to 10 feet, which will have a row of evergreen trees all along that side. So it's a 5-fold increase in the landscape buffer at its tightest spot. The parking will be relaid out in a general configuration with what's there today. We'll be adding new landscaped islands at the north and south end of the landscaping and front parking lot. The islands closest to the BJ's building will be 6 feet wide, where they're required to be 9 feet wide in the code. That's one of the variances listed Mr. Guardino spoke about. The entire front curb line, as it fronts on Veterans Highway, right now is right on the property line. There's absolutely no distance between the property line and the curb in the parking lot. We're going to remove that entire curb, bring it back in 6 feet to create a landscape buffer between the sidewalk and the parking area all along the entire frontage of the property. We've increased the landscaping all around the front entrance, kind of reconsolidated that entrance. If you drive in that parking lot now, it's just kind of big and wide open and painted. We're gonna shrink it down a little bit and get more landscaping in there. As far as landscaping, we will actually be increasing the amount of landscaping by 40% over what's here today. And even though it's in the call of the meeting, the numbers were reversed in the call, but it's going to go from 4.6% or 35,000 feet of landscaping to 50,084 feet of 1,000 feet of landscaping, so a 40% increase. The parking ratio, as Mr. Guardino spoke to, currently is at a 3.75 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of development. We're going to increase that ratio to 5.85 parking spaces per 1,000 feet. Again, primarily due to the reduction of over 104,000 feet of retail, the lower level in the Macy's building. In all other aspects, the site is going to be fully conforming with the town's regulations for site plan approval. I believe that the variances we're seeking here are very de minimis. We will not result in any undesirable character or change in the neighborhood. We have an existing shopping center. It's got a 213,000 square foot Macy's in it. We're going to have a shopping center in the end that's a little over 104,000 feet smaller with the BJ's as the anchor store. As far as the BJ's layout, we're going to continue the driveway that runs in the north-south. We'll have the trucks enter the building in the rear, and we'll be able to continue back out to the traffic light. We're going to redesign the easterly access to the traffic light on Veterans Highway. If anybody's been there today, if there's more than 3 cars queuing to leave and you go to enter, sorry. Oh, just looking at the plan. If you're in that driveway today and there's more than 3 cars looking to leave, coming from Michael's heading out to Veterans Highway, it blocks off the entrance coming in from Vets Highway. So we're going to widen that driveway up, put a left turn lane in, open it up so that we have no vehicular conflicts in there in the future. Other improvements that we're looking to make, we're going to reconfigure the cross-access between Comac Corners and the back of BJ's along the southerly property line. There'll be an interconnect there for vehicular traffic to go back and forth. And we're also proposing to do a modest pad site, small retail pads in the northeast corner of the property. We don't have any specific tenants for those pads at this point in time, but it may be a coffee shop or a small retail store or something to that effect in order to add a little bit more landscaping and activity in that section. Be happy to answer any questions the board might have. And again, I think the variances we're seeking are very de minimis. The nonconformities that we have on the plan, we're actually bringing a reduction in the nonconformity or having less deficiency, and the overall physical impact to the environment, I believe, is a reduction by reducing the square footage, increasing the landscaping, and increasing the available parking.
In the rear of Macy's now, you said it's about 27 feet to the
Okay.
property line?
26, yes.
And the new reconfiguration will be 50-something feet. Are you-
59.
Are you planning on a buffer?
We're going to increase the buffer, if I come to the plan. There'll be a 10-foot buffer all along the entire south property line. Sorry. 10-foot buffer all along the south property line where none exists today. It's 2 feet now, which is concrete curb and a fence. It'll be a 10-foot landscaped evergreen buffer there. There'll be a drive aisle, and there'll be head-in parking for the BJ's employees.
All right, thank you.
Actually, a couple of questions.
Sure.
First, with respect to the site plan, those 2 pad sites.
Yes.
Are, obviously, you've said that you don't have any tenants as of yet, but have you contemplated or considered one may need a drive-through, and is that considered in this site plan?
It's not part of this plan. I mean, if they were to propose a drive-through there, it would be a new application that's going to have
I
differences
understand
and
that, but
variances.
did you,
We're not
was
anticipating
it
that.
contemplated in this site plan so that if they did come after the fact, would it work in this site plan?
I'm sure we could design one that would work. This site plan itself does not contemplate that. It's retail pads without a drive-through.
Okay. Landscape plan, I know you gave square footages, but could you summarize the landscaping as it relates to the front of the site? I know you talked about the buffer in the back, but what's the plan with all the islands and with that front buffer between
Sure,
247?
there'll be a complete landscape plan filed as part of the site plan application to the planning department. along the entire frontage, currently, there's no property between the front curb where the parking heads in and the sidewalk on the state highway. We'll be increasing that to 6 feet all along. There'll be all new street trees planted in there, shrubbery planted in there. All of the landscaped islands in the parking lot will be landscaped with trees as well as either lawn or low shrubbery. We'll have to work out the specific details once we get under review with the planning department. As I said before, we'll do evergreens, an evergreen row along the rear of the property, dividing us between the Fairfield apartment complex and the back of the BJ's. And the entire driveway, both sides of the easterly driveway will be landscaped between the diner and our driveway and between our driveway and the existing parking lot in front of the Michael's store.
Okay. And then last question I had was, currently on that site, internal flow is somewhat problematic when it's busy. Has there been any significant changes in how the internal flow is going to operate with this new site plan?
Yeah, I mean, the main conflict that happens in that shopping center today really wraps around that easterly driveway, the easterly traffic signal where it gets very jammed up in front of Michael's. We're eliminating the head-in parking against the diner parcel, which is an out parcel to our east. We're moving the driveway over. We're moving the driveway as it reaches Michael's to form more of a cross intersection there. If you go there today, it's really offset in front of Michael's. You have head-in parking this way, so you have a lot of vehicular conflicts in there because people don't know which way to go, and it gets a little bit jammed up. So we're going to completely redesign this access here to make a much safer, more efficient circulation pattern. We're also going to be widening the drives as they come around. Very similar configuration to Macy's on that side, where you have the two turns at the corner where it meets the existing shopping center, and we're also improving the intersection as it is on the west side. So there's a straight through to the rear for the loading and a more of a stop-controlled intersection off the corner of the BJ's.
Thank you.
Be happy to answer any other questions the board might have.
This time I'd like to introduce Dennis Flynn. Oh, you want Dennis?
Good evening. Dennis Flynn, Rosenbaum Design Group, 2001 Marcus Avenue,
Excuse me
Lake
for 1
Success.
second.
Yes.
1 second. There's a car blocking the road. I'd like to get it moved. It's a Chevy Traverse, license plate number EMZ 971. If anybody owns that, if it could be moved, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. I apologize.
No, no problem. I'm going to speak about the building, the architecture of the building, and the signage tonight. The building is a pretty simple building. It's a one-story, flat-roof building. It's been designed to work with the existing shopping center. We've worked with the planning department. We've taken a lot of their suggestions and worked in some of the elements of the existing building into the BJ's building. The main entry to the BJ's is located on the east corner of the center, and the tire center is on the opposite end, on the west entry. As Anthony explained in his testimony, a small portion of the building does exceed the 35-foot limit. The vast majority of the building is at 29 feet. The parapet is at 29 feet. Just the very peak at the entry exceeds that, and it does not exceed 40 feet. And it's also important to understand there's no signage placed within that element that exceeds the height. As far as the signage goes, we're proposing 4 wall signs. 2 of the signs are located on the north and east elevation over the entry to highlight the entry, attract the customers to the entry. The other 2 signs are located at the tire center, one facing the north for customers to see as they come into the center, and another one over the actual doors to the tire center. The application requests relief where one sign is permitted, we're requesting 4. The reason for that is to have identification of entry and tire center to be able to have the customers understand where to park and have better traffic flow on the site. The wall signs exceed the 15-foot limit. The sign at the main entry is at 30 feet. The sign at the main entry on the east elevation is 25 feet. And the 2 signs for the tire center are at 19 feet. We felt this was important for the visibility, given the setback from the road, that the height was important to work both with the design and to have visibility from the road to these elements. There are also 2 ground signs that we plan to remodel, and as Anthony had said, we're basically taking the Macy's letters off, replacing it with a smaller BJ's. However, by the virtue of the way the zoning code measures a sign, it results in a slight increase. And a lot of that has to do with the letters. The BJ's has a lowercase j, it has an apostrophe, so it's very similar letter size. However, it does result in technically an increase in the size. The wall signs, we would be permitted to build 842 square feet as a single sign. All 4 signs combined are only 414 square feet. So while it is 4 signs, it is well below what we would be permitted as a single sign. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
No, not right now.
Thanks, Dennis. So for our final witness will be Wayne Muller, who is going to testify that the 1,030 spaces is more than adequate for the proposed uses.
Good evening.
Good evening. Wayne Muller, Vice President with the firm of Robinson and Muller Engineering. Our offices are at 50 Elm Street in Huntington.
Can you spell your last name, please? so we can correct?
M-U-L-L-E-R.
Thank you.
For the record, I'd like to submit copies of a parking analysis that we prepared dated October 23rd, 2019. If we may, could we put the site plan up on the screen, please? Is there an aerial photograph too? You guys have an aerial or no?
The only one that we have is for the drive-through aisle.
The back of the...
Back,
okay,
yeah.
Okay. The site plan would be great. So I believe that the site and its environs were very adequately described by Mr. Guardino and Mr. Robinson as far as what we propose here today. But essentially, the crux of it is that we're replacing the existing 204,000 or 214,000 square foot Macy's with an approximately 104,000 square foot BJ's. As indicated in my report, the existing condition requires a total of 2,832 parking stalls in accordance with the town zoning ordinance. As displayed on the plan, there are 1,053 parking spaces provided, so currently there's a shortfall of approximately 1,700 parking spaces. In the future condition, the site will require 1,787 parking spaces. 1,030 parking spaces are provided on the site. There's roughly a 780 parking stall deficiency. So what we're actually doing here, as it relates to the parking ordinance contained in the town code, is we're making the site more compliant by reducing the deficiency between the required parking and the parking that we're provided on the property. As part of our analysis, we we collected parking data at the site on 4 different occasions. The first being May 17th, Friday, May 17th. We collected them during the day, and then we went out on Saturday, May 18th, and then we went back on Friday, October 18th, and Saturday, October 19th. And what we found was that the site, as it currently exists, is underperforming. The maximum number of vehicles that we observed parked on the property in its entirety was 350 vehicles on Friday at 2 o'clock, and that was on May 17th. Similarly, on Friday, May 18th at 1:30 p.m., we observed a total number of 331 parking spaces for the total of almost 272,000 square feet of retail. So this center is viciously overparked as it relates to what's out there and the code in its current condition. What we then did was we estimated the quantity of vehicles that would be parked by the proposed BJ's and the retail pads using the statistics presented in the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual. And what that manual is a compilation of statistics for various different land uses, one of them being a discount club similar to BJ's and also retail shopping centers. And what we found was that in its entirety, on a Friday, there would be an increase in 199 vehicles associated with the BJ's and the retail pads, and on Saturday would be 299. If we were to take those numbers and strictly just superimpose them onto the existing conditions, which include any of the vehicles that would be parked with the Macy's, it would result in a total of 549 parking spaces on a Friday and 625 on a Saturday. So by not discounting any of the activity associated with the existing Macy's, the 1,015 paid parking spaces that we're providing on the property would be more than sufficient to accommodate the activity that we would anticipate to be generated. We performed an additional analysis, and what we did was we used the ITE data and computed the quantity of vehicles that were parked for the BJ's, the existing 67,000 square feet of shopping center to remain, and the retail pads. And that analysis indicated that there would be a total of 375 vehicles parked on Friday and 495 vehicles parked on Saturday. So no matter which way we looked at it, we believe that there's going to be ample parking provided on the property to accommodate the demand. And we took that analysis one step further. And if you look at the site plan, you can see that there are a number of parking spaces that are located in the rear of the property. There are a number of parking spaces that are located within the rear of the property. Approximately, I believe it's 298 in the rear. So again, using the numbers that I just described, if we were to just look at the northerly portions of the property, meaning all the parking spaces located to the north of the proposed BJ's and the north of the proposed, the existing retail shopping center, there are a total of 732 parking spaces. So no matter how we look at it, if we were to assume that all of the parking spaces to the southern portion of the site would be vacant, there would still be ample parking spaces provided on the property. In fact, on Friday, we would anticipate there would be 238 parking spaces vacant, and on Saturday, approximately 160. So no matter which way we looked at it, it is our opinion that there'll be more than adequate parking provided on the property to satisfy the demand of the proposed BJ's and the existing shopping center and the proposed 4,500 square foot of retail pads. We've represented BJ's on various different locations on Long Island, Bellport, Farmingdale, and also in Islandia. And what we found was that both the traffic generation and parking generation numbers associated with the BJ's, as it relates to the data that's contained within the ITE manuals, the Long Island data that we collected at those 3 facilities is actually lower than what the ITE predict. So therefore, we believe that we're performing a very conservative analysis and using the nationally generated statistics as opposed to local data, which would tend to be a little bit lower, probably due to some other competing uses, such as Costco and other BJ's facilities which are located on Long Island. As Mr. Robinson has indicated, we are proposing to enhance the access to the property by removing the conflict located at the eastern portion of the property with the shopping center to the east and creating a traditional four-way intersection at that location, where at the present time, it's disjointed, that you have to make a right and then a left and go around the building, and it's really kind of a circuitous route, which really doesn't function properly, and we believe that we're cleaning up that location. In addition, we're providing a significant amount of queuing at the easterly driveway and the signal at 347, or excuse me, 454. And that whole situation of the access on that eastern portion will become significantly better in the future condition than what exists there today. One final point was that we took a look at the level of traffic activity that would be generated if the Macy's were to be fully operational, as opposed to what it is today, which is a mere shell of itself, compared to what the BJ's plus the other retail uses on the site would generate. And what we found was that there'd be a reduction in traffic if Macy's was actually a fully functioning retail facility at 200,000 square feet, as opposed to what would be generated by the BJ's at 104,000 square feet, with the other retail uses on the property remaining consistent. So therefore, it is my professional opinion that there will be no parking problems on this property at any one given time, and that there is more than sufficient parking provided on the property to accommodate the application that's before the board today, and it is my opinion that the application should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions for
okay.
you, Mr. Muller.
Sure.
On the easterly entrance, the proposed easterly entrance, there's a small entrance that comes off the ingress, kind of turns into the drive aisle by the pad sites.
That's
That's
correct.
one way, correct?
Entrance only, correct.
Okay. And last question, in your professional opinion, how do you feel the cross-access improvement to the site to the west will improve flow on this site?
Oh, significantly. I wish we actually, there is an aerial photograph that's presented in the handout that Mr. Guardino submitted as Exhibit 3 within the handout. I believe it's very difficult to see, but in the eastern portion of the site by the corner of the building, you can see now how it's just kind of like a little bit of a free-for-all in that area. And then there's also the head-in parking that's located towards the Candlelight Diner. All that will be removed, and you can see on the site plan that's up on the screen, we're creating a significantly long throat for vehicles to queue up at the signal and eliminating the confusion that currently exists within that area of that corner of the building. So there'll be a significant enhancement to the cross movement from this shopping center to the shopping centers to the east.
And how about to the west? You know, the Comac Corners, I believe he said that there was an improvement in that corner also?
That's actually to the rear of the property, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, it's in the rear. That will actually be enhanced also. You can see from the plan, it'll be more well-defined instead of a very large area with just a lot of pavement.
And I from personal experience, it appears to me it doesn't get used at all today. Do you anticipate that will start to get used?
Based on our observations over there, it probably might see a little bit of an increase in traffic, but I don't think anything significant where we would be concerned about it.
Okay, thank you.
And one final comment that I would like to make is that the analysis that we prepared by superimposing the BJ's traffic in the various different scenarios, we didn't account for any interaction between the people that would, say, be going to BJ's and then the other retail uses, which would, again, tend to reduce the parking impacts, because someone would, say, go to the GNC and then go to BJ's, they would park once, maybe walk or do whatever, so there would tend to be a reduction in the overall quantity of traffic and parking because of that cross-activity between the various different uses on the property. And we did not take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. If I could just, I'll just wrap up. I just want to just touch on the 5 area variance considerations. The requested variances will not produce an adverse impact upon the surrounding neighborhood because the subject property is located in a commercial area along Jericho Turnpike and Veterans Highway and is already fully developed with a Macy's department store and other retail uses. Most of the required variances are not significant. The variances for facade height and several of the wall signs require only modest relief. The other variances, which are more substantial, like for landscaping and buffers and parking, island ends, et cetera, they all relate to ancillary components of the development, but not the building itself, or represent existing conditions, or in fact, an improvement over the existing conditions. The third factor is that there's no feasible method to achieve the proposed redevelopment other than the required variances, because the redevelopment is proposed on a site that is already fully developed and is in fact constrained by the existing development on the site. The fourth is that the variances that are needed will not adversely impact the physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood, and that is because the BJ's, the proposed BJ's and the pad sites will be located on an already fully developed site. So this is not an environmentally sensitive site, it's already a shopping center that is developed with a large commercial center. And then the last is that the alleged difficulty is not self-created. The difficulties here are actually created by the existing configuration of the lot, or by the existing development that's currently on the site, or by the need by BJ's to appropriately identify its primary use and, of course, its ancillary tire center. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No, thank you.
Planning?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. What we'll do now, if anyone in the audience wants to come up, everybody's going to get one turn, so collect your thoughts before you come up. When you come up, state your name and address for the record. Please spell your last name so we get everything correct. And then address the board, tell us your concerns, and then once everybody has spoken, we'll bring Mr. Guardino back to answer your concerns. All right? Thank you very much. Sir?
Good evening, Board. My name is Edward Enders. I'm a council rep with the NRECC, Carpenters Union Local 290, based here in Hauppauge. As you can see, I have a few of my members with me here tonight in support of this project. As union carpenters, I just want the board to know that we go through a 5-year apprenticeship. We are skilled workers. We live locally. We pay taxes. We own homes. We send our kids to the schools in the community, and we shop. And some of the stores we shop at are BJ's. BJ's has very nice, well-maintained stores all over the island, whether you go out to Riverhead or the store in Levittown. It's a well-maintained, nice store. I don't know why anybody would be opposed to it. And saying that, I would just like to say that myself and my membership support BJ's and support this project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay.
How you doing? My name is Michael Nuccio, 31 Holly Drive, East Northport, New York. N is in Nancy, UCCIO. This incorporates a few questions. One, these dates that they did the looking at the site for parking requirements and also traffic studies are not necessarily taken into account.
Why don't you just wait a minute?
Sure.
Till they leave.
They made their statement.
Well, again, we want to get everything
No,
on
that's
the record,
fine.
so. All right, Rick? Okay.
So I'll give a little background too. So third generation in Comac. I've experienced all different traffic and congestion in that area and what occurs on 347 Comac Road and in that shopping center. First of all, Macy's is an underperforming retail business, obvious from them closing locations across the nation. So we're not comparing apples to apples here. We're discussing about square footage that's being reduced, but you're taking basement area, not really change. The footprint stays the same. So we're trying to say that we're reducing the variance for the parking, but it's really not, because what it's going to really service is still the same footprint. The times that they made these studies are not taking into account holiday season and necessarily when all the shopping could be going on, and also the overflow that's going to happen from Target, which does happen consistently. Just looking at some of my notes, I'm sorry. Also, the time of the day that these studies are done, and also, I didn't hear anything about any traffic studies for 347 into... Right, but we have, for vets, I'm sorry, 454 Vets Highway. I didn't hear anything in regards to the traffic and the flow with the traffic lights and how that's going to impact. 347 backs up, 454, sorry, backs up when they're talking about expanding the easterly exit and making it longer. Yes, it will be better that it won't be bottlenecked and causing congestion into the parking lot, but it's also flowing out onto 454 during peak times. It's going to back up more into that parking lot, causing other issues around Target, into Party City, and so forth. The other part is, I didn't hear if there was any type of tax benefit that they're looking for or getting or so forth, but that's something definitely that should be discussed in the open forum, because I don't think that, there should be any consideration for this type of business and so forth. So the parking study that was done, he referenced retail and other wholesale. So we have 2 other locations of BJ's in the close distance. We have one in Deer Park and one in Islandia. I think that we should have studies on how many customers they have. That's something that I'm sure BJ's could supply that would give the board a clear understanding of what actual traffic would occur from this location, because giving a traffic study for nationwide and other retail locations is not, and then average together with wholesale, is not going to give us a true depiction of what's going on in our local area for these types of facilities. Everybody, I'm sure, is aware of the Costco parking lot. That backs up all the way down into Comac Road, and it's almost impossible to get around that parking lot during the peak, during their peak times. To put that in the center of Comac doesn't really have a center, a town, a main area but right now, like when there are parades or whatever it is, it goes from Home Depot to Macy's. There isn't an opportunity for us to be able to now take the center of our town and put so much congestion where we're not going to be able to get to the parkways and the main roads and...
Well, he's not going to be able to pick it up with the clapping, so
Okay.
go ahead.
It's going to be putting an undue burden onto the neighborhood, and we're not giving a true depiction of what BJ's and Costco's, those types of retailers provide. I'm in commercial real estate for over a decade. I deal with these types of businesses all the time, and I see the impact they have on their communities. And don't get me wrong, there are certain areas where this type of business is an excellent tenant, but I do not think in the heart of Comac, where it's already a congested shopping center, this would probably be better for something that's going to be more retail, the way Macy's is, some other type of retail tenant in that respect, to be doing a parking study, 200 parking spaces behind the building. Nobody is going to use that. Who is going to walk with 150, 200 pounds worth of goods in a shopping cart to the back of the building? It's not going to happen. They're not having access for it. You're not going to be going through the back of the building to get to these spots. So taking into account all those parking spots in the back is ridiculous. It's trying to say that someone's going to take those shopping carts and be from, I'm going to go to Target and then to BJ's. It's not going to happen. You're not going to walk with that cart with all of those things in it all the way back to Target or Party City, or it's not giving a true depiction of how it's going to impact us. The other part is, I didn't hear anything reference to the transit stop that's located on the west part of the parking lot. How is that going to affect the inflow of traffic and that bus being able to get to the parking stop that's next to the florist. One more second, let me just double check my notes. So if possible, if this traffic study and the parking study can be done the right way, that's going to give a true depiction, and then we get the correct data from BJ's, I think then the board would have more information to be able to make a true decision and not give any type of variance for parking, and make a real decision that's how it's going to affect our community and our lives on a day-to-day basis. I don't know if you all live in that town, but it's already difficult enough to get up and down that area, and there's a huge bottleneck already, and this is not going to help us in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Debbie Virga, that's V as in Victor, I-R-G-A. Comac may not be the town like Smithtown or Huntington, but we are a community. We pay very high taxes, both to the town of Huntington and Smithtown. I've been told that the location where Macy's is currently located is zoned as a shopping area, but that does not mean that we need to allow a big box store that will bring many of its own issues. On the field organizations, on his website, he actually states, strategically located at the high-traffic intersection of Veterans Memorial Highway, Jericho Turnpike, and Comac Road. So apparently they all recognize it, that it is a lot of traffic in that area. There have been studies that show the amount of traffic that is directly related to the size of big box stores. For example, a 200,000 square foot superstore, which is not unusual, this is going to be over 1,000, typically generates more than 10,000 car trips on weekdays and even more on weekends. Weekdays, we have 8 schools in the area, plus a number of preschools, churches, private schools, United Cerebral Palsy. I can tell you the number of buses that go through that area all day is quite a lot. So that would cause more dangerous situations for our buses. Traffic and noise depress property values in nearby neighborhoods. More traffic increases the cost of local government services, such as road maintenance and police. We already know what our roads look like. What if a big box store goes under? Look at the empty Target right now on Crooked Hill Road. How long has that been empty? What other store is going to fill the larger area like that? It will not increase your tax revenue because the tax benefits of big box stores are negated by the cost of providing public services and these developments and declining tax revenue from existing commercial smaller stores. And it's interesting, as they mentioned today, which I wasn't aware, of the tire center. What's going to happen to Goodyear across the street? What's going to happen to the QVC? All the other little stores in the area, GNC. What's going to happen to those stores? The nail salon. What's going to happen to these people that do give us
But
tax?
please,
There is a Costco 3.6 miles away and another BJ 7.1 miles away. We have enough vacant stores in our community, and I don't want to see more. And I really don't know what was going to happen with Macy's. But to put a box store the size of BJ's, who wants to remove over 750 parking spots, change the landscape of the area, is not the answer. I think that the zoning board needs to take the time and see what the impact would be on our community, our town. Comac is our town. We care about it. We care about the traffic. We care about what we look like. We don't want to be known as big box stores. We are a community of people that care and love our community. We have an excellent school district. We have excellent libraries. We have excellent parks. But what are we going to be known as? Nothing but big box stores. We have 2 Home Depots. We have a Walmart. We have Costco. What more do we want there? We have Target, 1 Target closed. How much more are you going to do this to our community? It wouldn't happen in Kings Park. You wouldn't even let a Home Depot come over here in 2006. You didn't even allow a Home Depot, but yet you allow a big store like BJ's to come into our neighborhood. You should be ashamed.
Who's next? Good evening.
Hello. My name is Ann Guayone. I'm a Comac resident.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Guaglione.
Thank you.
I'm aware that the comprehensive plan for Smithtown is currently being worked on by the firm H2M, and that it will not be complete until sometime next year. And while I'm also aware that businesses within any community come and go, and typically without any input or expressed interest or concern from the area residents, I am left with several questions for the town of Smithtown that only you can answer as the current situation in Comac. One, what are the benefits of granting the File Corporation organization these variances and therefore the actual big box store to our local community? Please tell me what the benefits are to our community. What will be their tax incentive? What tax rate will they be paying into the town? Does the community really need this? We already, as Debbie mentioned, we have a Target, we have Whole Foods, we now have Burlington. There's a Costco 2.1 miles away, and the other BJ's in Deer Park is 6.7 miles away. There's also one in Islandia. We have Walmart that sells similar items. Would BJ's Wholesale or any big box store in that shopping center boost our local economy? What's the impact on the existing businesses, the mom and pops in that shopping center? What's the cost of the additional government services to us? What is the cost of the police and the fire protection? What about the other local resources, water usage, waste, sewage? What if BJ's goes out of business? A simple Google search, and I implore you to do one. BJ's is in financial trouble right now. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to look it up. What about hours of operation? More traffic means more noise, more fuel emissions. Who is responsible for the traffic study? Will one be conducted? Will we be able to see it? Who is responsible for an environmental impact study? Will one be conducted? Who is responsible for the economic impact study? Will one be conducted? Who will be responsible for collecting their garbage, and where will it be disposed? With regard to signage, will the approval of the variance set a bad precedent for future development? Why do we have to go beyond code to accommodate this big box store? Why? What about the municipal bus stop that other people have mentioned that is located on the western side of the parking lot? They never brought that up. What about the details of the added restaurants of the artist rendering on the site? They don't have anybody for it. They just say a retail pad. Why Comac? Why? Can you answer that question for us? As a resident, this is my perception. I cannot see any benefit to having another big box store in our community. What they offer is already offered in our community many times over. When you duplicate services, oftentimes it doesn't work. Look at the Target, it's now sit vacant. Initially, I imagine that BJ's Wholesale will be like any other shiny new toy. People will ooh and ah over it, and then once the parking becomes an issue and the traffic jams and the overall rundown appearance of the area becomes an issue, people will be more inclined to shop elsewhere. The businesses that share that strip mall with BJ's Wholesale will suffer. The small businesses in that strip mall, as well as many other small businesses in Smithtown, are finding it difficult enough to stay afloat. Consider all of the vacant stores we currently have. This big box store will have a direct impact, as many of them sell duplicate items. You're not going to leave your melting ice cream and frozen items in your car to go to the Greek Village, or go to Toromina, or go to Bagel Chalet to grab a bite. They are long-established businesses in our community, and they deserve our respect. And they deserve the respect of the Field Corporation as well as the town of Smithtown. The BJ's Wholesale in Deer Park is 85,000 square feet. This one, the proposed one, is over 100,000 square feet. Just look at the one in Deer Park. It's large enough. Now they want to make this one bigger. This big box store will increase truck traffic from from deliveries to garbage pickup. Our roads are already in bad condition. Additional truck traffic and car traffic will accelerate deterioration and result in higher cost for repair and maintenance. The traffic is already a nightmare at the corner intersection of the two roads. This is a big area for traffic accidents. The zoning codes are there to protect us and to protect our way of life. You, the town board, have a responsibility to enforce the code to ensure that we have the integrity of our community is maintained throughout time. I respectfully ask that the board table this proposal until all the necessary studies have been conducted and a comprehensive plan from H2M has been completed. As far as the unions, we're all pro-union. Everybody wants to see everybody have a job, but this site needs to be developed properly, and they will have a job. We need balanced development. We need smart growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Good evening.
Hi, how are you? My name's Laura Sparrow. I live on 1 Laurel Drive in Smithtown.
Can you spell your last name, please?
S as in Sam, P as in Peter, E-R-A.
Thank you.
So what everybody has been saying is so true. I live a little bit east of the Mayfair Shopping Center on Jericho Turnpike. And as I come off of Wyandanch, make a left onto Jericho from Wyandanch Boulevard, now I have the apartments, the 55 and over apartments that are going up. I don't know, Fieldstone. And then there's an assisted living facility 2 stories up right next to me. Then there's the Mayfair Shopping Center, which has done a pretty good job, I have to say. The traffic that I expect when I go to what I call downtown Comac is going to be horrendous. There's more people shopping with their children to a BJ's Superstore, those kind of stores, than there are like myself. I would go to Macy's, get my nails done, get something to eat, go to the pet store. It's a different kind of environment that the BJ's wholesale brings to that corner. It really doesn't belong there. It really belongs downtown, where the LIE is. It doesn't belong in the middle of a community in a town. I know that we have Target, that's set back more, it's more away from the street. I don't understand why the town can't find another retail store, if that's what it is, like a Nordstrom's or a Bloomingdale's or a Nordstrom's Rack. There's lots of other stores that could be more simpler and less, I'm calling it disruptive. I find BJ's is going to be so disruptive, especially during the holidays. I go to Bank of America, which is also right there. You know how Jericho goes into, just on a normal Saturday, for me to go to the bank to get money, it takes me a long time because traffic is all backed up there. Maybe I don't know if the traffic studies were done in that area. And what about coming off the
Excuse me.
Sagdacos?
Can you just address
Oh,
the
I'm
board, please?
sorry.
Thank you.
The Sagdacos Parkway. Now, other people that live in other areas, maybe from, the extreme North Shore, more further from Smithtown, or anybody who wants to come shop in Comac, now are going to get on the LIE, the Northern State, and the traffic will dump into Jericho right there. I think that's where you get off to come that way, whether it's east or west. But that's something I think that you people really have to pay attention to and look into for us. You know, it is. I plan to stay there. I grew up here. You know, I raised my children here. But the taxes, I know we need the tax revenue. I don't want my taxes to go up. But I think you really got to think about it in a different manner. It doesn't need to be a wholesale place like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Felissa Hoffman, Hoffman. I'm a resident in Comac. And to reiterate, feel the same way as the last 2 women that just spoke. I'm just speaking, I have 3 kids. One is still in the Comac schools. I can tell you from having 3 kids what they did not speak about at all. There's Comac High School near there. I can tell you that lots of teenagers will walk down Town Line Road, cross over, go into the shopping center where the Macy's is. They'll utilize the pizza place, the bagel store. The congestion and the traffic, there are always accidents. Nobody spoke about getting police reports and looking back to see how many car accidents, that whole strip, even going back from Indian Head Road, down Jericho Turnpike, towards where you would turn in to go to the Macy's Shopping Center, endless in the last few years. I don't know, I'd love to know the statistics on how many car accidents there are. When you have now Comac High School students walking down Town Line Road to go to that shopping center, the amount of the congestion and the traffic that will be added, who knows what will happen? People walking, crossing the street. There'll be more accidents. Pedestrians will get killed. More and more do you want teenagers, high school students that just want to go get a bite to eat to be impacted by this big box store coming there just so they can make $1? And I personally feel we've lost all retail stores. We used to have Sears for people to go family shopping. Macy's was wonderful. If they don't want to stay there, we need something else that could bring in, retail stores like that. We don't need a big box store. We have too many big box stores. But for me, where are you going to go shopping? Macy's was always our go-to place. Even before that, when it was Stearns, you could always find something. I don't want to have to travel to the Smith Haven Mall, Walt Whitman Mall. I feel that they should bring in a smaller store that won't cause all this congestion. So I just hope if you live in the area, the people that are building BJ's do not live in the area, do not really know. They're just going by statistics. You really have to understand, for people that live there, what we need. We do not need BJ's.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. Shirley Gioia, Gioia. I am a resident. I'm also a realtor in the area. I agree with what the other residents have said. We are a family-friendly community. We'd like to keep it that way. We do know that there is retail in the area. However, a big box store is so vastly different from other retail stores in the area. From my point of view, the big box stores really need to be closer to the LIE, closer to a Northern State Parkway, somewhere where people who are shopping there can get in and out properly. Our community, we're right there on Jericho and Vets. Right across the street is a wonderful community where when I'm taking young couples who want to move to Comac, I tell them all about the wonderful baseball section of Comac, which is right across the street from that Macy's. And lots of young families love to go into that area because it's a great, quaint area, close to shopping, but tucked back. My concern is having these big box stores, having all this traffic come in. Somebody hasn't mentioned is the fact that Macy's gets deliveries maybe once a day. Their products don't spoil. BJ's, big stores, are always going to have produce coming in. These deliveries are going to be daily, if not multiple times during the day. We don't want that type of traffic, also with all of the shopping coming in, but all of these large delivery trucks coming through our area. Not only is it going to be an eyesore, and I know they've mentioned landscaping so many times, and we love the landscaping idea and the signage and all that great stuff. But what they're not taking into consideration is the family feel of the area. We don't want these big box stores coming in. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone? No. Everybody gets one opportunity. Anyone else? Oh, good evening.
Hello, my name is Jared Zimmer, Zimmer. And one thing that I think that was also neglected to be mentioned was the traffic report. And in addition to the traffic report, how many additional cars would be handled on Jericho Turnpike and Veterans Highway? Because even with Elwood Orchard, a proposed project in Huntington, that was an additional 1,400 cars per day per hour going through that area. And as it is right now, even making a left out of the shopping center onto Jericho Turnpike, their infrastructure is not there to handle it as it is. It gets backed up into the middle of the street. So adding a big box retailer with 200,000 square feet, that is actually, 100,000 that's operational, is still much more than what's being used at Macy's right now. I don't think that the infrastructure handling either direction going east Veterans Memorial Highway or west on Jericho Turnpike would support the traffic flow going in and out of the shopping centers. And I don't support the BJ's.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? Anyone else? No?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just be very brief. I just want to address a couple of comments. I'm not going to address all of them. But I think, the gist of most of the comments here are that people are not happy that they are losing Macy's. And I understand that. I understand that. We are dealing
Please,
with,
please.
we're dealing with a use here that's permitted under the zoning code, and a BJ's and a Macy's are the same use under the zoning code. They're identical uses. People may perceive them as differently, and every use is a little bit different. A Home Depot's a little different than Macy's. They all operate a little bit differently, but under the zoning code, they're all treated the same, and that's what we have here. So, the gentleman that said this is not apples to apples, I disagree with that. This is apples to apples, because what he's trying to do is basically say that we should be comparing the underperforming Macy's to an underperforming new use, and that's not what this is about. We're looking to have a successful use in the shopping center. That's what the shopping center was constructed for. Zoning doesn't deal with specific, doesn't zone, it doesn't dictate specific retailers. Again, it dictates retail use. Many comments dealt with business competition. I hear what people are saying. I hear it all the time. We have Costco down the street. We have BJ's in Islandia. We have it in Deer Park. What's going to happen to the vitamin shop and the other shops? Zoning does not regulate, nor does it protect, as you all know, business competition. Business competition is the free market. And BJ's is coming into this community and expects to be successful, and that's their goal. Whether or not there are benefits to the community, I think there are benefits to the community, but people are apparently not seeing it that way. But I would tell you that's not one of the standards, the benefit of the community. It's the balancing of the benefit actually to the applicant versus any detriment to the community. Again, the variances that are here are about signage and landscaping. They're not about the use. They're not. I know what people are saying. That's not what they're complaining about. But this application is about signage and landscaping and parking, which is going to be made significantly better by the reduction of half of the square footage of one retail use to another retail use. I guess in the last comment, somebody was complaining about produce being in BJ's. I just want to remind people there was a supermarket there not that long ago when there was a wall bounce. I have nothing further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I have a couple things. There was also brought up bus stop. Is that
Yeah,
bus
we
stop?
get Chris Robinson to address that. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, there's a bus stop that exists along the west property line, right in this area right here, which is going to remain and be reconfigured as well. And we've spoken to Suffolk County Bus, and we'll be meeting them out there to mitigate any temporary impacts that may be. Bus stop will stay.
Okay, does it affect functionality with a busier ingress there?
No, we don't believe it'll have any impact on the functionality of the bus stop. Bus stop will still be accessed at the traffic light. It'll still pull in here, and it'll be able to go across and leave at the other traffic light as it does today.
Okay, thanks. There were several people, I believe it's going to be from Mr. Mueller. Several people were worried about traffic impacts. I quickly looked through your report. I saw mostly parking. Do you have a traffic impact study?
We did not prepare a detailed study. What we did do is, as I indicated before in my direct testimony, was we compared the traffic that would be generated by a fully functioning Macy's with the existing shopping center to remain, and compared that to what would be generated by the BJ's with the shopping center to remain and the pad sites. And what we found was that if Macy's was fully functional, or a similar retailer within the 214,000 square feet, the traffic would be less. So therefore, the impacts of Macy's and of the area are already felt. We're actually making the situation better by eliminating the by eliminating the possibility of 200,000 square feet being occupied versus 100. So therefore, there will be an overall reduction in traffic as it relates to the shopping center.
Do you have numbers?
Sure. In the PM peak hour, there would be a reduction of 180 trips. On Saturday, about 100. During the midday, about 100, and in the morning, about 70. So
Less?
Less,
Than a fully functioning retail at 200,000?
correct,
Okay.
correct. And again, and I think that,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
it's okay. Again, we're reducing the retail area as it relates to the code by 100,000 square feet roughly. And as indicated by Mr. Robinson, the parking ratio is getting better. We're coming more into compliance with the code, with the proposal than what we were before. Again, in my studies indicate that there'll be more than ample parking provided on the property, even if we were just to look at the northern portions of the site.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. No. 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 Everybody gets one, no, everybody, I said it twice, the procedures. I'm sorry, can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
No. What happens next? Actually, there's been no decision tonight. We don't have a environmental report. We have to wait for that.
But you are the people that ultimately make the decision whether or not these case goes forward, is that it?
On the variances, yes.
No, it's not. It's not.
Do I live in No. No, I do not. No.
Two quick
It's
comments,
closed.
please.
No, it's closed.
We didn't close it, Ed. There's a motion to close. You got it.
Speak more than once, but
What?
I
You
can't
gotta
even
act
get
on
to
the
speak
motion.
once.
You want them to speak again?
No, no,
He
no.
made a motion to close the hearing.
All right, did you second it? All right, moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
I want to know, did you ask Macy's to leave? Macy's came to you and said, hey, we want to.
This is a zoning board. This is a zoning, we have nothing to do.
So then this is a done deal, is that what you're saying?
No,
No, it's not.
But you realize how we're.
we understand. That's why we collect, this is why we collect all the information. We go over, we set the parameters. You know, we have another.
Maybe, I think
We
what
have
you-
11 cases to do still, and I apologize to all those people who are waiting here, you know?
I think maybe she misunderstands. This is we're the Board of Zoning Appeals. What happens is the town of Smithtown has a set of rules. Those rules everyone has to comply by. Town says, no, you can't comply to those rules, then you have to come to this board to ask for relief from those rules. We're not the town of Smithtown. We are sort of in between the town of Smithtown and the residents. It's our job to take in the information that we're allowed to take in, which are those 5 considerations. Business competition isn't one of them, so we have to look at what. Correct, and we look at all of those things, and we have to somehow find the happy medium, or say no if it's that bad, or find a happy medium between what the applicant wants and what the town permits. And that's all our job.
And I know you guys can't determine what type of tenant can go in there and so forth based on the code. But what the code does say is the number of parking for the square footage of the building.
We can't talk anything about the case. We can talk generalities if you want about policy. The case is closed, and we can't. You're putting yourselves and us in a very bad position after it's closed. You can't. It's not in our.
We went over the procedure twice. We specifically said, you get one opportunity.
Nothing is going to happen.
Nothing's gonna
Nothing is
happen.
happening.
There will be no decision tonight. No decision. Keep in touch with the planning department, and they'll let you know.
It's what?
Correct.
No, this is the only meeting we have as part of
The planning
variance
department.
Yeah. I honestly don't know. This is just a zoning board.
I know, but we want to find out where we have to go next.
You can call
You
the
need a
town.
break, Rick? Rick needs a little break.
All right. All right.
That was, I tell them, that's all off the record, what just happened here.
It has to be.
Has to
Yeah.
be.
All right. We're just going to take a 5-minute break. The meeting again?
Don't try to take my...
I know it. I'm back here, down here.
Okay. Yeah.
The next hearing on the agenda is case number 18238, James and Bernadette Russell, 145 Jackson Avenue, St. James. The location of the property is the east side of Jackson Avenue, 200 feet north of Rutherford Street. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard from 35 feet to 26 feet for an existing 345-square-foot deck.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is James Russell. My wife and I reside at 145 Jackson Avenue South, St. James, New York.
Would you like this gentleman to speak on your behalf?
Yes, I would. This is my son Eric. He's going to take over from this point, thank God.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you state your name?
Sure.
spell
Good
your last
evening.
And address, please.
My name is Eric Russell. I live at 5 Park Avenue, Wisconsin. Last name Russell. So good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Eric Russell. As which I stated, I live at 5 Park Avenue in Wisconsin. I'm the son of the applicant, James Russell. This evening, we are seeking relief for the board for our rear yard setback from 35 feet 0 inches to 26 feet 0 inches for an existing 345 square foot rear deck. The deck is approximately 20 feet by 0 inches in width by 14 feet 0 inches in depth with stairs off to the side. The deck encroaches the required rear yard setback by about 9 feet. Being the home is a high ranch, the upper floor is where the main living space is located, about 6.5 feet above grade level. The deck was constructed off the kitchen area to align with the living space, as anyone would expect. Being the deck is elevated above the grade by more than 36 inches, the Smithtown zoning ordinance requires a deck to comply with the primary structure rear yard setback, which is, in our case, 35 feet 0 inches. If the home was was your atypical colonial or ranch, the living space would be at the first floor, and the deck in question would not require a variance. In this situation, the deck could potentially be constructed as close as 6 feet from the rear property line, assuming the deck's height did not exceed 36 inches above grade level and still compliance with the town ordinance. Our deck was constructed around 1991 and has been there ever since. We don't feel this application has any adverse effects on the neighboring properties and is not a substantial in nature. Does the board have any questions for myself or my father?
I'll ask. Thank you, though. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Anyone in the audience want to be heard on this application? No? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you very much for your time.
I gotta get to.
Next case on the agenda is case number 18239, the Steinbach Protection Trust, 18 Roy Drive, Wisconsin. The location of the property is the south side of Roy Drive, 719 feet northwest of Nichols Road. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the rear yard from 25% to 55%, decrease the minimum distance from any lot line from 6 feet to 3 feet for an existing gazebo, reduce the minimum distance of paved surface to a lot line from 1 foot to 0, reduce the minimum distance in the front yard from 40 feet to 37 feet for an existing covered porch, increase the maximum allowable height of a fence and wall from 6 feet to 12 feet for an existing 4-foot fence on top of an 8-foot retaining wall, increase the maximum allowable height of an existing retaining wall from 6 feet to 8 feet, reduce the minimum distance for retaining wall to the rear property line from 8 feet to 0, reduce the minimum distance from a retaining wall, the top of a retaining wall for a fence from 8 feet to 0.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. I've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. Just a little background on this matter. Ronald Steinbeck, who owned the house for many years, was a New York City cop and a New York City actually motorcycle cop, and he lived out on Roy Drive for many years. And as many people did in the olden days, so to speak, they built things on the property, either oblivious to sometime the requirements of permits, or they just didn't know. But in any event, as you can see, this property backs up on Gibbs Pond. So one of the big reasons, or probably the only reason, that this retaining wall is what it is and as large and high as it is because there's a pond behind it. I don't know if the pond ever came that high. We know it's not a tidal pond, but Mr. Steinbeck, as well as some of his neighbors, did build retaining walls to protect them from the pond area. There is a reduction of the paved surface request in the rear of the property, as well as the distance of a paved surface from the property line. These are all things that were done many, many years ago. And since Mr. Steinbeck has passed, his daughter, Cheryl Steinbeck Heinrich, and his son, Lee Steinbeck, but most of all, Arthur Heinrich, who's here with me tonight, is doing all of this work to get this house in shape, which may stay in the family with one of either Lee or Cheryl. We're not sure yet, but the house needs a lot of work, and Arthur has put a lot of time and effort into fixing it up so that it meets the standards of town building codes today. And that's why we're here too, because we need certain variances that were never applied for whatever reason. We don't know. Mr. Arthur Heinrich and his wife inherited the property, as I said, along with the brother. So they're trying to make it right, whether they keep it or use it for, I don't think they're going to rent it. They'll either sell it or one of the family members will live there. Given the fact that this was done over a long period of time and really not known by Cheryl or Arthur or Lee, we asked the board to give consideration to granting these variances. We don't think it will produce a change in the character of the area. If you've seen the area, you see that some of the neighbors have made these retaining walls. They're very substantial. They're made out of concrete. So it would be a significant job to cut them down or reduce them. Whether this can be achieved by some other method, it's all done. It's not something that we did. We inherited the problem along with the benefit. Whether the requested area variance is substantial. It might look substantial, especially the retaining wall situation, but as a practical matter, you have a retaining wall's about 6 feet, and then you need a fence, some type of a fence on top of it, obviously. You don't want to fall off the retaining wall into the edge of Gibbs Pond, so that's why the fence was put up. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the environment, no. We're not changing the use in any way. The house isn't being expanded. It's just being made right after a lot of years of it being added to, I guess, little by little. Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, I guess Mr. Steinbeck created the difficulty, excuse me. But now Cheryl Lee and Arthur have the problem. They didn't create it, they want to fix it, and we're asking this board for its favorable consideration.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
No. Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18240, Kenneth Wigand, 10 Miles Court, Comac. The location of the property is the west side of Miles Court, 474 feet north of Fleetwood Road. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard from 50 feet to 47 feet for a proposed 265 square foot second floor addition.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kenneth Wigand, spelled W-Y-G-A-N-D, and I'm the homeowner at 10 Miles Court in Comac. I'm here today to request a variance for a rear yard setback modification from 50 feet to 47 feet, which in actuality is a little less than 2 feet encroachment in the rear setback and only on the cornermost tip of a second-story addition over my garage. I'd like to present you with a brief but relevant background on the variance request. My family and I have lived in Comac for 14 years. We're coming up on 9 years in our current home. My wife and I have 4 children. The oldest is age 10 and the youngest is age 2. In our home, we're very tight on bedroom space. We have a master bedroom and 3 very small bedrooms upstairs, none of which are large enough to bunk 2 kids together comfortably. Our plan was to move to a larger home in the area up until about 9 months ago when we experienced wind damage to our roof, which resulted in water damage, which traveled all the way from the second-story roof to the basement and ruined everything on the south side of our home in the process. Given that the repairs that need to be made affect 2 of my children's bedrooms, we considered it and decided to apply for a permit to expand our second floor 8 additional feet over the garage to expand one of the smaller bedrooms and allow for 2 of my children to share a more adequately sized room without us having to move to a new home.
Excuse me, Mr. Wigand.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, please, go ahead.
But you didn't submit the affidavits of mailing and posting. You submitted.
Oh, I'm sorry, I still have them here.
Thank you. Please slow down a little bit with us, court reporter. Thank you.
Sure, yeah, of course. The design of the proposed 8-foot addition is to continue a 2-foot cantilever that already exists along the back of the home. When applying for the permit, I was informed that I would need a variance to continue the 2-foot cantilever into the 8-foot addition due to the way that our property is shaped. The far corner of the addition with the cantilever would extend a little less than 2 feet into the required rear setback, thus my request for the variance. To quickly address each of the questions posed by the board, regarding number 1, the granting of the variance would allow the second floor addition to be uniform across the back side. Building without the variance would result in a staggered structure which would be visible from both the side and the back of the home, which I believe would be more unsightly than the proposed design. Regarding number 2, we did consider many other options to avoid having to apply for a variance. This includes continuing the rear cantilever, which in addition to the unsightly view from the outside, it would create non-uniform room space, which would make the furniture placement and usability more difficult. We also considered cantilevering out the side instead of out the back for additional room space, but we forewent that because we realized that would look even more unsightly, not only from the back and the side yards, but also from the front, although that wouldn't have required a variance. This would also cause significant construction challenges the way that our home's support beams are laid out. Thirdly, we also considered selling our home and moving to a new home, and while that's still an option, that brings a great number of other challenges along with it. Accordingly, we feel strongly that this design is the best option not only for us, but also for our neighbors and for the town as a whole. Regarding number 3, the variance requested is not substantial in my opinion. The infringement on the rear setback is under 2 feet, and it's only at the far corner of the 8-foot addition. Also, this is for the continuation of the existing cantilever, not to create a new one. And just from a mathematical perspective of the 265 square foot addition, the variance actually applies to less than 2% of the addition, or just under 4 square feet. Regarding number 4, there would be no significant environmental impact since this only affects the second floor. And regarding number 5, the hardship was not self-created since this is a proposed addition and does not currently exist. Thank you.
Anyone on the board have any questions?
No, thanks.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18242, Angela Cano, 94 Grassy Pond Drive, Smithtown. The location of the property, the west side of Grassy Pond Drive, 300...
Blaze, you missed one.
I'm sorry, did I skip one?
Yep.
I'm sorry. My apologies. The next case is case number 18241, 90 Forest Avenue Corp. The location of the property is the west side of Forest Avenue, 150 feet south of Hampton Avenue. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum lot area from 10,000 square feet to 7,500 square feet, increase the maximum gross floor area of the lot from 30% to 35.2%, reduce the minimum rear yard from 35 feet to 29 feet for proposed 2,509 square foot single-family home with a 233 square foot attached garage.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. I've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. This is a situation where we have properties that touch each other that were purchased by my client, and he desires to renovate completely the existing house, which if you look at that survey is kind of different, for lack of a better word, and it kind of rambles across the property. And as you can see, the back of the property with the existing house, the setback is 23.9 feet. So we really can't do any better with the new house setback than ask for a variance for the setback of the new house being from 35 to 29. 35 is the old file map rule, and 29 is really the best we can do to fit in the subject house. Now, the new lot would be 7,500 square feet, and that, requires a variance with respect to lot area. And we want to increase the gross floor area from 30 to 35 in order to make the house livable. And we think that given this situation, this is the best way to not only improve the existing house, but to build a new house which conforms to the character of the area. Forest Avenue, Hampton Avenue, that whole area there is a very nice community. My client wants to refurbish and rebuild the existing house and put a nice two-story residence on the vacant portion of the property. I want to also indicate that we have Health Department approval for the vacant parcel. And of course, we have to come to you and ask for your approval of these variances. We feel that it's not an undesirable change in the character of the area. It conforms with the properties in the neighborhood. That's the old house, which will be refinished and redone, and the proposed new dwelling. Whether the benefits sought can be achieved by some other method, it would be very difficult, for example, to chop off a piece of the old house and give a more extensive backyard, and it really wouldn't help my client or a future purchaser of that house, nor even the community. Whether the requested area variance is substantial, there are plenty of 75 by 100 square foot parcels in Smithtown and in that particular area. Again, there are separate tax bills on this property, and that's why the Health Department approved it. I have the Health Department stamp on the survey. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect on the environment, apparently the Health Department didn't think so, because they issued a permit to do the septic system on the 75 by 100 piece. Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, no, we didn't do anything yet. We're asking this board for its favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on the application?
A couple of questions, Margo. Which lot is this part of?
I don't know if Blaze has the tax map, but it's, they're two separate tax lots. I can give you the surveys. I don't know if you have them.
I have a tax map.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Do we have this in the file? Is there another site plan in the file?
No? That's all we have.
It should be in the file, but you can have that one.
Do you need this one back? Because I think we have this one.
If I need it, I'll go to planning and make a copy later.
So I guess my question would be, is this lot to the east, the west, not going to be
It's hard
on Hampton, it's on the opposite block, so this is a through lot?
Yes. I have.
One second.
Forest runs north and south.
Right.
So if you look at Forest and you look at where the proposed lot is, south of that is where the existing house is.
So Forest is to the, okay, so the south is where the existing lot is, the north is where the new lot would be.
Right.
Now, was this new lot either single and separate or not used to enhance the value and/or utility of the lot to the south?
No, it's not in single and separate, obviously. There was separate tax bills, and that's why the health department approved the application. But as far as being in single and separate, it's not.
So and the lot to the south is currently 100 by 125 and would
That's
remain
correct.
100 by 125?
I'm sorry?
It is 100 by 125 and would remain 100 by 125?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks. Planning? Do they want to see that coming?